Champions League finals tonight, Scotland are playing next weekend. So yeah, I'm still entitled to talk about season 2022-2023, despite the fact Rangers seem to be signing half of Serie A and MLS. I've brought out the new kit. I've got a new goalkeeper. It's all systems go for season 2023-2024. But part of moving on to the next season is getting rid of, saying goodbye to, letting go the various players who won't be joining us for the next campaign. And there was a big night at Ibrox a few weeks ago, the 2-week draw with Hearts, when we said goodbye to 5 major figures of recent and more long-term Rangers history. In the case of Alan McGregor, we also said goodbye to Ryan Kent, Alfredo Morelos, Fil Helander, and Scotty Arfield. So a bit disrespectful to try and squeeze everything they've done for Rangers, how I feel about these guys, into one video. So I'm going to give them a wee video each, starting off with Fil Helander. Arrives in the summer of 2019 for £3.5 million from Bologna, and straight away we knew what we were getting. Italians don't tend to pick players who aren't very good at defending. Swedish internationals always do really well in the British game. Swedes, and you knew he's going to have the physical attributes, but you knew that if we were getting him for £3.5 million, if he was coming to Scotland, all due respect to us, there must be a little bit of an issue there. And as we know, it was his injuries. It got to the point with Big Phil that while everybody else at Ibrox was getting kind of off-the-shelf injuries, he was getting bespoke stuff, haute couture injuries. Steven Gerrard talking about the fact that the specialist had only seen a foot injury like what Big Phil got once in 25 years. Feel really sorry for the guy, and I think that's something, because we all kind of knew that was going to be the story. There's no bitterness towards Big Phil at all. Everybody wishing him all the best. I don't even think we're going too far down the road of what if, because basically if he could play more football, if he wasn't as injured, he wouldn't have been at Rangers. So what we did get out of him, we really enjoyed, though. He's kind of started off, his debut was a League Cup against East Fife, away to East Fife, a Sunday afternoon, August 2019. Straight away, he's an assist for Jermaine Defoe. We had the reserves out that day, early rounds of the League Cup. It's an assist for Jermaine Defoe to score the first goal of the game. Big Phil himself. I think sometimes he's credited with that goal in some sources. I think the sources that call it an own goal are probably more accurate, but he's up there for a set piece. It's a free kick into the East Fife box. He nods it down, comes off the defender into the back of the net. And I think the delight in his face that day showed you this wasn't a guy who was kind of condescending towards Scottish football. He wasn't thinking, I was playing against Juventus and Lazio 2 minutes ago, and now here I am in a windy kind of one-stand stadium in front of less than 2,000 people. The big man was up for it. The next round of that League Cup, one of the few away games I've done in the last 10 years, away to Livingston at Almonvale, and he was given a seriously hard time by one Lyndon Dykes. Rangers won the game 1-0, but you'll remember at the end of the game, Steven Gerrard took to the plastic pitch, and as the players were leaving, he kept the Big Phil on the pitch and was demonstrably showing him in a really animated fashion how he should defend. This is a world famous midfielder, but a midfielder nonetheless, trying to tell a Swedish international centre half how to defend. A bit of a public humiliation, but you can say it worked, because the next round is the semi-final at Hampden. Big Phil scores one of the goals in a 3-0 win over Hearts, and in the final itself, of course, we lose 1-0 to Celtic, but it's an offside goal. The pre-VAR days, it's not picked up. That's the only way we're going to breach that defence that he was forming with Connor Goldson. The other way you can breach it is, as happened at the end of that game, Big Phil is out for another spell, injured. Even in 2020-2021, 55 season, he's at the heart of a defence that sets a British defensive record. We only conceded 13 goals across the entire campaign. All competitions, I think Phil played 31 games that season. His partner in defence, Connor Goldson, plays over 50. So even when we're getting the best out of Phil in terms of his appearances, in terms of his fitness, it's still not really enough. He's never going to be a guy who is playing every game of the season as per Goldson or Tavernier. But he was magnificent, as he generally was anytime he took to the pitch. I do the whole thing, the Swedish stuff. I'm as corny as everybody else. He's Thor, he's like Odin. But there's a thing, when you see pictures of Big Phil attacking the opposition box, never mind when he's defending his own box, still pictures that I've seen on the internet and the back of newspapers, he gets to some height, an incredible height, and he jumps in this. I remember once thinking he's like Odin sitting on his throne in Valhalla, but that's been taken and superimposed, kind of 10 feet above the penalty spot in the Kilmarnock or St Johnstone 18-yard box at Ibrox. Absolutely amazing height he got to, and he's this really incredible stance where he's kind of bolt upright, but his legs are coming up, his knees are coming up, as if he is like kind of sat in a chair, and then somebody's kind of photoshopped him onto these photographs of him attacking the ball in the opposition area. And I think within that, all joking aside, you saw how he got injured because he was all out. He was never holding back. He was certainly never scared of picking up injuries. That never held him back in any sense. He just threw himself, utterly launched himself at the ball all the time. Fil Helander. I'm talking about in the past tense. The guy's only 30 years old. I hope he manages to recover from his injury problems. Doesn't look likely. It's dogged him his whole career. Only got about 19 caps for Sweden, and I'm really honoured, really, to have seen him playing for Sweden. He came on as a sub in extra time during their European Championship last 16 match against Ukraine, which was staged at Hampden, in Euro 2020, that was held over to Euro 2021. Of course, Sweden lost the game to Ukraine because I'm, if nothing else, a big, massive jinx. But Fil Helander, I remember him scoring a goal against Slavia Prague in the 55 season. We ultimately lost in that tie, but Big Phil goes over to Prague and scores a cracking goal over there. And of course, before he kind of signed off, before injury really took hold of him, he scores a winner against Celtic at Ibrox. Ange Postecoglou's first Old Firm match, and a Rangers side ravaged by COVID as well as injuries, probably suspensions as well. We had Leon Balogun playing at fullback that day, and big Leon coming in worked out really well for us during the 55 season because he had to step in a few times, obviously, and going forward. We needed centre halves to come in and replace Phil when he wasn't fit. But just before he went into a really long spell out injured, he launches himself at a ball going into the Celtic box in the second half and heads it home for 1-0, an Old Firm victory, a legendary moment, a classic Rangers centre half winning a real battle of an Old Firm match with a header from inside the opposition box. So if he wasn't already in the folklore because of what he did in 55, he certainly sealed it that day. But then about a month later, 3 weeks later or so, he breaks down with injury again. I think he played at St Mirren at the end of that season, and he goes off again by half time. So completely dogged by injury. That's the thing we'll always remember about Fil Helander. But equally, we'll remember he was an absolutely magnificent defender who played magnificently for our club. A club that's used to having some good centre halves, and the fact that he's one of the best we've ever seen says all you need to know about him. And we wish him all the very best for the future. Thanks a lot, Big Phil.